Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the KZ SA08 8BA TWS, and that's actually 4 BAs per side, but in KZ speak it's an 8. So here's kind of what they look like. I showed an earlier video. It is a big chunk of black plastic, kind of nice looking, but still a little big to be smashed into your ear, but it actually fits a little better than it looks. So this one came from the AK Audio store on AliExpress. You can see it's about $60. There's a $10 coupon, so it's about $50. And if you ask them, they would probably give you a promotional price. But I don't have that handy right now. But that's the gist of the price right now. So as I said, this is the SA08, 4 BAs per side, TWS. And we can't really talk about KZ wireless without talking about the battery and the Bluetooth connection kind of right up front. So the good news is the battery is definitely better than the KZ Z1. There is a small battery in the case, but this guy got me over 3, somewhat over 3.5, not quite to 4. So my Z1 is stretching at about 2 hours. This one is probably get 3.5 to 4. So definitely an improvement. I don't know if that's strictly because of BAs only, or they actually put a bigger battery in it. So I'm not too sure about that. On the Bluetooth connection, it doesn't really like my Samsung phone all that much. I haven't really figured out why. The Z1 doesn't really like it a whole lot either, but it works much better on my LG phone. I had problems connecting, and once it was connected, it would drop out after a little while. And I would always end up just putting these guys back in the case, let them reset, and then connect again, and then it was fine. But I thought I'd bring it up, and I don't have nearly as many problems on my LG, but on my Samsung, it's not such a fan. So the fit, these tips that come with it are actually quite shallow, and maybe my camera will focus. You can see that the nozzle is kind of right there at the end. And that's really meant to hug your ear with this little tip too. So this gets inserted, the shallow tip, and this gets kind of hung in your ear. And you end up with this ear hugging fit. And that works. Otherwise, you could put a bigger tip on and it'll just stick out of your ear a little more. But as far as a better look, the standard tips will insert quite far into your ear, and you'll end up with a nice tight fit. So I mentioned volume because some BAs have this as well, where it's really a medium volume set. When you go into higher volumes, it will let you know, and the voices will get kind of shouty and loud. It's kind of saying, hey, why don't you turn that volume down a bit? And so I do think you'll have to practice a little bit of volume control and figure out what works best for you. But yeah, you'll definitely run across songs if you have the volume up where it just sounds a little bit bright, a little too shouty, and that's just kind of a signal that you should notch the volume down. So the sound, and this is sort of where the divisive part of these KZ BA only sets are, and I'm talking about the SA08, the ASX and ASF. They all have this similarly weird tuning. And on the S08, it's probably better than the other two, but they don't sound like traditional, almost analytical, technical BA sets. They try to sound more of a DD warmish sound, so they're a little bit bass heavy. And it actually works on the SA08. You end up with this fun, warm, relaxed V shape. And that sort of reminds me of an older KZ set as opposed to a BA only set where you're expecting something that's really tight and fast and technical, maybe a bit analytical, and that's really not what you get. You end up with something that's fun and warmish and relaxed, and I think that's what's throwing people off is you're expecting one thing, and when KZ doesn't deliver it, you're kind of scratching your head, why did they make this BA set that sounds like this older DD set that's kind of not what a BA set was for. So some people just like the sound, and I like the sound of this one very much. But do I like it as a BA set? Not as much. I mean, I think they could have done something similar with a DD. But, you know, as it is, if you just kind of ignore all the technicals and what it's supposed to sound like, it sounds really good. And I think that's where the ASF has the same issue, is people just like the sound of it. They don't really care what's on the inside. It just has a pleasing sound to them, and you kind of go with that. So, like I said, the bass on this guy, it's a bit too much, especially for a BA set. It's kind of borders on boomy at times, and the tips can probably help with that. But I mean, if you're looking for a BA set, you're going to be struck with how much bass is happening there and why they did that. It's just not clear, and I think it's just to come up with this overall warm sound signature is what it does. And the same thing, it's not BA speed on the bass either. It's not super fast. It's actually kind of slowish, and but it's still impactful, especially on the mid bass. It sounds really, really good, especially for pop and EDM. It really hits you really hard and really nice. And again, when I talked about that volume control, that mid bass impact is going to make you turn it up a little bit because it sounds really fun and energetic. And I kept on trying to pump it out just a little louder because it sounds great. And then eventually you'll kind of get struck with some vocals that sound a little too much. But anyway, so the quality needs to be just a bit tighter, a little bit more controlled. But, mid bass wise, it sounds really good. And Robin Schultz headlights, those bass hits right in the beginning, pretty good. They won't go nearly as deep as a DD, but definitely passable, definitely very enjoyable. So the mids, you're just going to end up with a lot of bass bleed, and I think that was intentional on this guy to give you that very warm vocal sound, a very full, rich vocal, as opposed to a BA, which will tend to be a little leaner, a little thinner. KZ didn't go that direction. They definitely pumped a lot of bass into the mids, and it just gives you a full and clear vocal, but not overly detailed, and it's not going to be a clarity monster like people were expecting. So KZ clearly went for warmth over clarity. It's very musical, but not analytical. So if you were looking for something to listen to those notes, listen to a particular instrument, it's really not that set. It's very much I very much enjoy this track, not I enjoy this note, this instrument. It's just a very musical set. So one thing to notice about the mids, there's a vocal shift, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It's really hard to figure out what's going on, but if you listen to Adele Hello, the beginning of it, her vocals are very close and intimate and clear and sound great. And then after she goes over that first rise, her voice sounds a little more distant. There's a subtle shift, and you'll hear it, every now and then, and it's just something to notice. But there's also this song, Paris Jackson's new song, Collide, where she's got that really warm, kind of lower female voice with that guitar. Is really in the sweet spot of the SA08. That's sort of where music sounds best. And EDM is a close second, but her voice, those vocals, very clear. The guitar right in the beginning, very much in the sweet spot of the SA08. So a good song to check out anyway. So the treble, so unlike the ASF, it's got nice extension and detail. It's not as rich in the mids as the mids, and sometimes it doesn't stand up to the bass in the upper mids. It's the one part that'll fall behind because the bass is quite loud. The upper mids, especially if you hit in that upper rise, it's kind of strong as well, and the treble takes, a step back. But overall, if you don't think about it, you probably won't notice it. So like I said, the treble is a bit weighed down by the bass. It'll definitely soar, and it's almost like the CA16 for me, or it's just about a notch too low. If they just notched it up one bit, it would kind of sound dead on. But as it is, if you really think about it, it's like the level is just a tad lower of where I would want it to be. But, you're just nitpicking it at this point. And Lindsey Sterling Elements is kind of a good song to check out because her violin really soars, but then you hear all this bass kind of underneath. And again, you're just kind of scratching your head, like, why do they have this BA bass with so much bass bleeding in where it really shouldn't? And that's just one of those songs where it's a kind of immediately obvious where you didn't need all that sound underneath. It would have been fine to notch that bass down by quite a bit. So like I said, on the technical side, if you're looking for a very technical set, high performance, that's not the SA08. This is very much a musical, easy listening, relaxed set. And there's just too much bass. It's going to lead to congestion behind the vocals especially. And the way the staging is set up, everything is pretty much wide. The vocals are very clear right in the center. And then a lot of the instruments happen right behind the vocals, right in the middle of all this other bass as well. So you end up with this, a bit of a cloudy presentation, and that affects your details. I think they're cut short a little bit. If you were expecting those really nice fading details on a BA, not quite, because there's so much other stuff happening right in the middle, and it's wireless, and I think the codec actually has issues with doing those very fine micro details as well. So not much working for you in that very micro detailed area, but I would still say it's quite detailed, but don't dive too deep into micro details. So as I said, the staging is actually good. If it just had a little bit of height, if the vocals were just a little higher, there'd be a bit more space, and I think it would have cleared up a lot of what happens behind the vocals. But tonality-wise, I'll still take it over the ASF just because the treble is extended, and you're not missing all the higher parts of the cymbals and all these other instruments. The ASF is pretty wacky, and we'll get to that one next. But when I say the treble is just like a notch down the SA08, it's literally like just barely below where I would like it, but it doesn't really affect the instruments as much as the ASF does. So that's it. That's my take on the SA08. Something I really like. I'll probably just rotate it in with my Z1. They're two different. The Z1 is this aggressive V shape. This is definitely a more relaxed, kind of a more older KZ house sound, and just very relaxing to listen to. You don't have that, aggressive sound bang in your ear like the Z1 does, and sometimes you want that for a workout or something high energy. This is kind of a more relaxed, easy listener, and I very much appreciate that. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.